Hi, I'm Dave Mountain, and I'm an email marketing consultant for Marketing and Advertising Direction, aka M&AD.com. Today we're going to talk about writing better email subject lines. I'm going to discuss why I'm an expert at this, why it matters, how you should measure to see which ones are working better and which ones aren't, determining how to make this right for mobile, grading materials after your tests are completed, and your next steps. This will be a relatively brief primer, and hopefully you'll get something from it. Let's move forward. First off, my bona fides. The writer Malcolm Gladwell once said that if you spend 10,000 hours doing something, you must be an expert at it. I must be an expert at writing email subject lines. Having done it for a couple of different ad tech startups in pharmaceutical, in nonprofit, and e-commerce, as well as retargeting, I've also thought a lot about it. It's just one of those things that has been a day-to-day part of different roles for over 20 years. So I've seen a lot of them, and I've measured a lot of them, and I know what works and what doesn't work. But it's important to also remember that nothing that we're about to say here hasn't been said before. People have been trying to get folks opening their emails for 30 odd years at this point. Tricks are found and then refound and then forgotten about and then come back to or tweaked off of whatever trends are happening in social media, etc., etc. There is nothing that is absolutely perfectly new under the sun. What is important is the way you think about this stuff. So this seminar is not going to give you specific best words to use or definitely always do this kind of task, because all that stuff is data driven and all that stuff is also cross category. If you're writing B2B, a winning subject line out of B2C might inspire you. If you're writing for a nonprofit, a winning subject line out of a social media play or even an app may inspire you. They may give you that spark that tells you something is good. Look at a lot of stuff, see what wins in other categories, and feel free to port it over, because while your B2B user and your B2C user and your nonprofit user and your pharmaceutical user are all very different people, they're all just still people. They're all looking at the same device. They're all looking at the same inboxes frequently. They're going to react on a base level to stuff that's better and stuff that isn't. It also helps if you've got a journalism background. Journalism helps here because subject lines are on many levels akin to headlines. Newspaper headlines are designed to get you to read more of the story. Subject lines are designed to get you to open the email and read more about it. So that journalism mindset of front-loading pieces, making sure that that you're not burying the lead or burying the important or the novel or the new, is all very important and helpful here as well. I've also, oddly, been a songwriter. I used to have a band back in the day, and I think that some of that writing exercise has helped subject lines, because songwriting is often about writing choruses, and choruses have to be catchy and have a hook and be memorable, and all that, of course, plays. Now, having said all that, having had all this experience, the reality is it doesn't matter unless the data is winning. So you don't need to have done all these things to be good at writing subject lines, but you do need to be fully engaged in the process. This isn't just something that you can expect AI to generate for you. Moving on. Why do subject lines matter? Well, think of this in the way of big levers and small levers. A big lever is going to have the ability to really impact the effectiveness of an email campaign. And those are the things that everyone sees. So your sender name, whether you've got your logo, which a technical pro would call a BIMI certification setup, what time of the day that you sent it at. Those are the things that are going to impact everyone in your world, your list. but the subject line is going to be that plus wide variation. Subject lines can tank, subject lines can succeed. And in all likelihood, that's the thing that's going to change most from send to send. You're eventually going to gravitate to a best time or a better time to send. You're eventually going to have your BIMI set up, or you're not going to have your BIMI set up, depending on where your business is. You're not going to keep changing your sender name, because that's going to be problematic and difficult from your sender reputation standpoint. But the subject line should be different a lot. They impact many metrics. It's not just the open rate, and we'll get into all the different metrics that a subject line can have impact on the next slide. They're also, in my experience, underthought. Management and brand owners will get way deep into the weeds of images and fonts and copy, and the reality is that if your email's got a 40% open rate, congratulations, not bad at all, but it does mean that 3 out of the 5 users that you sweated bullets over on all that body content didn't see any of that. The email subject line is a universal, it's a big lever. Think about it almost as much, if not more, than the rest of the email. It's got that level of importance. What also tends to happen with these is folks do some testing, they then plateau a bit, or they lose inspiration, or they're not paying attention to other things that are going on in the category, and they kind of go on autopilot with these. They say, oh, we did a bunch of testing, here are the subject lines that work. No. Subject lines that work, if you keep doing the same ones, you will eventually wear out, they will eventually fail, they will become stale. Creative wear out is very much of a thing that happens in subject line world. So keep in mind that your practices are strong, they are not best. Everything's on loan here. What should you measure? Well, you're obviously going to measure your open rate, but keep in mind that open rates have degraded over the past couple years in terms of reliability. Apple and Google and others have played in the space to improve the privacy of the individual user, so open rates have gone up for everyone, for the most part, for all sends, without more people actually opening emails. Keep in mind that your open rate is not your true open rate. There are ways to get to your true open rate, but regardless. Conversions. Sales and e-commerce plays especially are going to look at emails and say, how much money did it bring in? Political donations, charitable donations. We'll look at this and think, oh, this had a better subject line, we got more donations, or we got more subscriptions, or we got more purchases out of this subject line. The reality is that most conversions are fairly rare events, and it's easy to not get to an acronym I like to refer to, statistically significant confidence level. It's easy to see that if the open rate for one email is stronger than the other, or even the click rate, it's less confident to say that this definitely sold more product, just the subject line itself. Keep in mind also spam complaints. A lot of folks think that spam complaints are just something that happens in the category or the fault of the list. The reality is that a deceitful subject line, something that's going to inspire an open but then inspire clickbait or a feeling of you tricked me to open this, are going to create more of an emotional reaction, and some of the users are going to go back and specifically mark you as spam because of it. So keep an eye on that and see if it spikes, especially for emails with high opens. I'm also a big fan of looking at multiple opens and clicks. In general, I feel like when you get deviation from mean on these, that you are seeing something that is living in the inbox more, or something that is being forwarded or, kept in mind more than a subject line that was immediately disregarded and deleted. Unsubscribes are also a good indicator. Keep in mind also seasonality and channel concerns. Q4 is generally bad for unsubscribe. Election cycles are generally bad for unsubscribe. You may be running uphill on this category and freaking out about something But if you're testing in real time two different subject lines and one has a dramatically higher unsubscribe rate, it's roughly akin to one having a dramatically higher spam complaint rate. Final metric I like to look at, I call long tail, and that's determining whether you're getting opens and clicks past that immediate 6 to 24 hour range that you normally get response. In general, the longer traffic is a very good sign, but only if the traffic is still quality. Moving on. Keep it mobile. You have to know who your audience is. You have to know how many of them are going to be viewing it on a handheld, and also if you're sending at a time of day when they're more likely to be on a handheld. It's easy to write a subject line that has a really problematic truncation. If the subject line is cut off at 35 characters, and you then suddenly have a very bad brand moment. The best way to safeguard against this is to view your email on a bunch of different devices. The machine way of doing this is to use a service like email or on Acid or Litmus and do simulations that see how your piece looks on all different devices. The simpler way is to just send to your own devices and check. There is an 80-20 rule here in play, which is to say that if you're going to send to your Android and your Google phone, or your iPhone, I should say, that's probably going to be fine for most of your mobile pieces. So if you have email on Acid or Litmus, use it. It's great. But if you don't, just have two different phones or a colleague that you can test with. Moving on, how to grade them after they've gone out. Use different sites. There are a bunch. I have my favorites. I'm sure if you do a Google search, you'll find yours. You can use your subject lines, punch them into these sites, and get a numeric grade from 0 to 100 on how a different site grades your subject line. Take the rankings seriously, but not religiously. If you've got something that's got a 95, it's not definitely better than something with a 92. But it's probably better than something with a 78. It's okay to also use these sites because some of them will suggest or use AI to generate other subject lines for them. Take those with this high grain of salt. AI is not great at avoiding brand damage, and generally you can skew or tweak to make them even better still. It's fine for first draft or for if you're absolutely stuck, but don't use it for final pieces. During the send, if possible, split the list. Do an A/B test and see which is working for more than one metric, and optimize the back end so that 75% or more of your list is getting the best subject line. After the send, determine what you've learned, measure the deviation from the mean, and get inspired for the next round. Email is a journey. It is not a destination. If your subject lines are all coming back the same, you need to test subject lines with stronger deviation. And finally, summing this all up, put together a back catalog. Make sure that everyone else involved in your email program has the material on hand to refer to. You might get hit by a bus, and they shouldn't be at square one on your email program. Back test. Resist certainty. It is really easy to draw a lesson from a winning test and then think that that practice is set and finite and done. It's also an error. Keep it in mind that all stuff is on loan here. The subject line that doesn't work now might work next year. It's worth checking again. Avoid the formula, especially to legacy or long-standing clients where you've got emails that are going to the same list over and over again. If it's going to start boring them, it's going to start getting unread. Look at these metrics in context. Look for deviations from mean. Know if all of the emails are doing a little bit better on open, or all of them are doing a little bit worse on unsubscribe, etc. Look at your stuff in context. Have your humility about it. Your subject line of your email is just one factor of a lot of different things, and it should not be something that you absolutely know that this is the best subject line you don't have to test anymore. Have intellectual humility about your subject lines. And finally, embrace the journey. Email is a constant evolving puzzle. It should be fun. And if it's not fun, find something else to do. And if you need some help with all this, that's the contact information. Thank you, and happy emailing.